And we're singing. We're singing. Time to talk. Beauty and the Bitch.
Morgie.
Hey.
So, it has come to my attention. Because you have set up the table and the mics in my bedroom. Now, we're doing a podcast episode today.
Pray tell.
Now, I did not realize. Therefore, I have prepared nothing. And I'm fucking drunk.
Okay, but that's for sure irrelevant from the fact that we are recording a podcast. You did that all on your own. Beauty and the Bitch does not endorse drinking.
You're drunk too.
Oh. But not as drunk as you are.
Well, but you can't compare yourself to me, Morgan. That's not fair. It'll make you feel bad about yourself. And I just don't want you to go there, honey.
Okay, baby.
So, I maybe should have guessed that we were doing an episode today because one of my nearest and dearest is in town. And we did talk about bringing her on this podcast.
We sure enough did.
We did talk about that. I would like to introduce to the world the incomparable Jessamyn Fitzpatrick.
Hello, my loves. Did you actually talk about bringing me on?
Oh, yeah.
Before or after you asked me?
Before.
Oh, what if I said no?
I would say, well, fuck that up.
You wouldn't be here today or in the future.
They would have said, well, girl, get a room at La Quinta.
Because you're not staying for hospitality. So
wow, okay, all right. This is how I'm paying my room and board. I got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You're working for your money right now.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's very celebrity style. I feel very glamorous right now.
You are very
There was
glamorous.
a literal red carpet that you walked in on.
You're right.
That's just because we spilled the wine.
No, that...
Yeah, it was a tan carpet originally,
right.
but whatever, you know. Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Beauty and the Bitch. I'm Mick.
I'm Morgan.
And that's Jessamyn.
Oh, and I'm Jessamyn. I don't know. I felt too professional.
She's here.
Normally when I'm sober, we do that right off the bat, but I forgot because I'm genuinely drunk.
Sometimes we get minutes in before we remember that this is even a podcast.
That's very true. We're
Or
just
your own
shooting the
names.
shit. So, Jessamyn and I met in college, and we met as, we were sophomores when we really became friends, right? Because that was Bet and Boo. We did
that's when
The
we,
Marriage of Bet and Boo by Christopher Durang.
That's when we, oh my god, plug. That's when we became, like, soul friends. But we met, actually, you were in a thesis production. That was actually the first thesis show of the year. You were playing a very straight cad.
I bet it was so believable. Oh, girl, I believed so.
You put this man in a silk smoker's robe, and apparently everyone's like, loves the puss, clearly.
Yep.
But you were in that show, and I was his stagehand.
Oh,
Yeah, do you remember this? Oh my god, and our friend,
doesn't.
our friend was so mad at me because I didn't own a pair of black flats, and she had to lend them to me. Our friend Pookie, shout out to her. She will never fucking forgive me for not owning black flats. I'm like, I want to be an actress.
Fair, like,
there's character shoes all the way. I guess so. I didn't know.
Did you wear stilettos to dress rehearsal?
So I borrowed her black flats because my only job was literally to come in at intermission and pull 2 strands of clear fishing wire that dropped down a set of curtains over these plywood, like, I don't know, window frames. So it was like supposed to, indicate the passage of time or whatever. That was my whole job on that show. But I remember meeting you one, before the show backstage because you had a lip piercing then.
Yes.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
It was so cute.
It was really,
Thank
I thought it
you.
was really cute. And you were taking it out and you were putting fishing wire.
Had
Probably the same damn fishing wire that I was supposed to search for in the dark and pulled out to like drop these drapes. And you were putting it in your piercing as a way of keeping the piercing open.
That's smart.
And so you were just like sort of talking mostly to yourself, but I was also in the area. And you said something to me and I was like, that's great! That's when we first met. I always remember that, yeah.
I had like a clear nose stud that I would put in, and then I would just put like foundation on it. But it like straight looked like I had like a wart on my nose.
Yes,
it was like not cute.
Morgie, and that's why. Look, I had just gotten that piercing.
Yeah, you hadn't had it for
before.
long.
It was not. So it fucking hurt.
Yeah.
To take it out and then thread fishing wire through it and then tie that fishing line and then pull it. But the thing is, this is my level of vanity, even as a freshman in college. When I put because I had a clear thing, but when I put it in, it looked like a whitehead. It looks like a whitehead.
Yeah.
And even when you cover it with makeup, it's like, what's that weird bump?
Mine
and I was like, you know what? I'd rather be in pain. I've always chosen pain over ugliness, and I will continue to do that. Frankly,
well, hey,
I'm not mad.
Price of beauty.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that why you're the beauty?
I am the beauty. Thank you so much for saying
Jessamyn,
that,
thank you for joining us. Our time here is done.
Well, no, so the thing is, as someone who, as one of my side hustles, I do a gig where we run a feminist tour of the art museum in Chicago called Badass Bitches. I always kick it off by saying, for the purposes of this tour, we are going to pay homage to the great feminist icon Gloria Steinem, who said, anytime anyone calls you a bitch, the appropriate response is, thank you. Because a bitch is just a woman who's taking power and control of her own life.
Yes.
So,
yes.
I don't know.
Well, okay, but you do believe I'm the beauty, though.
I
You
think
did
that
say
was a funny joke.
She assumed
She knows
that,
that
Morgan.
this is a comedy podcast
It's
that we
not even-
embrace laughter.
She wasn't even like, this is
And
my opinion. She was like, this is
irony.
obvious fact. You are the beauty. That's why you're the beauty. I heard her
No,
say
put
it.
your switchblade away. You don't have to put that on her throat. Put it down.
Jessamyn, we're not friends if I don't
down.
continue to be the beauty. No one's ever said I'm the beauty before. I mean, I've said I'm the beauty many times in the mirror, but never on the podcast.
Have they been sitting live in this?
They have
recording
been,
room?
and I've
That's
been
probably
holding
why.
guns at them too. They may be afraid of me, but
Oh, gotcha.
but you would think they would say you're the beauty if they got a gun at your head, but I guess not. Well, so Morgie, would you like to ask, because you know Jay, you've met before, you know Jessamyn, but would you like to ask some of these guest questions? It might be a little bit more authentic for you to ask.
I have my own. I typed them up.
Oh,
I'm really good at
Morgan
taking
doesn't
notes.
need my notes. You can keep your notes, you motherfuckers.
Okay. Well, that was really aggressive, and we're going to talk about this off air later.
I'm drunk.
But for the present moment, let's just ask some questions. Again, thanks for joining us.
Oh my God, my pleasure.
Actually, you really had no choice because you're staying at Mixer. This podcast.
It is
But
a
we're still
legit
so grateful.
honor. It's an honor. I got really excited when Mickey sent me the text. I was
I'm so glad.
Yes, I want to be on this.
Yeah. So, of course, we pretty much spend all of our time talking about content and like pop culture and like the kinds of things that we like or don't like. So, what kinds of content do you consume, or like where do you consume it at?
Well, so I love a podcast. I'm a huge podcast fan. So I travel a lot, or even just like daily commutes. I'm big into podcasts. I feel like when I first discovered them, there was a period in my life where literally at any party or social gathering, I would start half of my sentence with like, "Well, have you listened to this podcast?" And I had to cut it back a little bit, honestly, because it made me start to feel like I didn't have any of my own original thoughts, which maybe I don't. Because it was literally like, "Well, this podcast host said." But so I love
As Ira
podcasts.
Glass always says.
Right? Oh my God.
Oh God, not
Yes.
him. I mean,
You don't like Ira
no,
Glass?
sorry. I shouldn't. I do like Ira Glass. I was not expecting to talk about this. I love his. I think he's very, very talented. I have some personal juicy goss about him being really, really shitty to an artist that was a really close friend of my mom's and my family. In their relationship, they dated, and he's actually like, I mean, this is not like like hot tea. Like he's actually gone on record saying, I think he said that she was like boring and like dull and like not fun. Linda Berry, and she's brilliant. She's a cartoonist. She's incredible. And I like met her as a little girl because she was friends with my mom, and so I remember when I heard that, I was like, what a dick.
Fair enough.
But you know what? I mean, perfect example, right? Like you might be a piece of shit in your personal life and still an amazing contributor to art and culture, which I do believe. So no, I think Ira Glass is great as a podcast host. Yes,
But also, fuck him.
but maybe not. But also fuck him. But like also like I don't think I needed this anecdote to know this, but like I would never want to date him. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's there's that. So
for sure.
But yeah, I love podcasts. I'm a book gal, and like hardcover, not hardcover, but like actual physical item book. I could never get super into e-readers. I want to because they're eco-friendly and lighter, like easier to carry around.
They don't have the same feel.
Yeah,
though.
Yeah.
I like the actual physical.
Do you ever
object.
listen to audiobooks on like commuting stuff?
Not really. I have, and I've liked it. So that's something that, like, I've been thinking about of, like, okay, like, Audible is a thing, and it sounds like it would be really fun.
That's what I alternate between podcasts and Audible, just
Yeah.
because, like, because I have spent a lot of time commuting in, like, my recent life, and so it's been, like, a great way to, like, get through my TBR pile.
Totally. Yeah, no, I do. I like audiobooks, the ones that I've listened to, but I haven't delved into that too much. And then for, like, video and stuff, just, like, streaming, like,
Yeah.
Netflix.
On demand.
Yeah.
Whenever.
Nah.
Yeah.
I
But
borrowed all the Hulu passwords and all the HBO
Right.
passwords and all of the Netflix, every login I could possibly get out of a friend.
I always feel bad when someone asks for mine, and I'm like, I wish I could give it to you, but I borrowed it from my college roommate's fiance's parents.
Right,
I just can't.
right, exactly. Actually, there was a really good, I think it was a blog post that I read at one point where someone was talking about the point in a breakup where she discovered that she could no longer log on to Netflix.
That's fucked up.
Right? And, like, that's
over.
And actually, it was interesting because she described it in stages, where the first phase was actually when you log into Netflix and you see recently watched. So the first phase was when she would log in on her ex's account and she would see in the recently watched shit that she was like, he would never watch this. Who's watching this? This
Queen.
this is that new person that he's clearly dating. And it was shortly after that. And that was, like, the, like, ticking time. She was like, I'm about to get bumped on this account real fast. And she did.
Damn.
And it was, I don't know, it was
That
really
sounds
good.
like a Black Mirror episode to me. You know what I mean? You break up with someone you dearly love, and you notice all these other things
Through their accounts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when
It was
their
really,
account,
it was
you're
really
like, "Ooh, that's not
well
right."
written and interesting. And yeah.
That
But-
makes so much sense, though, because we're so integrated digitally with, like, the people, even just, like, roommates, right? Roommates that you share everything with.
So true. Well, and speaking of roommates, actually, you did spill some hot tea before we started recording.
Oh.
You still have cable.
Like, how old are you?
What century you live in?
Well,
How much money do you make?
not enough. No, so this is the benefit of living with 8+ people. And so I guess it's, I didn't even realize that that's what cable was, but yeah, it totally is. I live, or for the past 4 years have lived in a sort of communal living situation. I live in Chicago.
Chicago!
Chi-town! There we
Did
go.
you-
See, Mickey knows.
Did you guys live together when Mickey was there?
did.
Okay, so y'all did.
We had the most beautiful apartment. Absolutely teeming with bed bugs.
Which, by the way, we fully brought there.
Well, our former landlord Irma might hear you, girl. Irma in the sky with diamonds.
Norma.
Whatever. She was very old.
I kind of
but
like the name Irma now that you've
I do
said
like
it.
Irma. But we did say Norma in the sky with diamonds because she always looked a little dazed, you know?
Totally. And you remember she would only talk to me? Do you remember that?
Yes,
So,
she was
reverse
uncomfortable.
sexist?
I think it was she was maybe uncomfortable around men is more what it was because it was
But
Mickey,
it's just Mick.
but
Hardly even a man. I tell everybody that.
it was Mickey, me, and then my boyfriend at the time, Dan. So there were 3 of us, and literally anytime there was like a maintenance issue, like to the point where I would be like, Dan, Mick, we're not even drawing straws anymore. One of you has to call her. I'm not making this call. And one of them would call her.
And she'd be like,
And she
Jessamyn,
wouldn't answer. No, she wouldn't answer. And then she would call back on my phone.
Oh my
Like, she would call me.
God.
And so at a certain point, I was just like, okay, all right. Like, sisterhood.
She was
like, I guess
afeared
you
of
just...
us, yeah.
And I don't know why. But yeah, we definitely...
Was it really beautiful except for the
It
It was actually
yeah.
stunning.
Gorgeous.
Hardwood floors. Huge. Almost floor to ceiling windows in the living room.
Wow.
Very close. And they pulled that. They were on hinges. So it was like, what do you call that? Like a French door except
Yeah.
windows. But like the size of a French door, they were huge.
Indoor sconces.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was
a
that's a
beautiful,
beautiful
apartment.
Was it expensive or like
No.
normal?
No, it was also like 6 inches from the red line train. So when the red line went by, like things would fall off our walls. Like that's
Did that
why it was
bother you, though?
expensive. No, you got used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cheap. Like, it was a really nice deal. It was a 2-bedroom for 3 of us, and it was in a northern Rogers Park neighborhood of Chicago, close to the lake, also close to the Red Line train.
Awesome.
But we had a great deal. No, it was like $350 a person.
Damn.
Between
It was
3 of
just
us. Like,
astonishing.
it was
Yeah, it was great.
Great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then we brought in bed bugs and
Right.
became a living hell.
What did Norma in the Sky think?
We said, Norma, we don't think we brought these in. And she said, well, I don't think there were bed bugs there before. And we said, who knows?
We may never know.
We to this day.
And to be frank, it can't be proven.
To be frank, we literally brought a box spring up from the alley, so...
We need a place to sleep.
Yeah, this is the lessons you
Look,
learned
we were poor.
in your...
Okay?
Yeah, exactly. We brought everything up from the alley that we could find, because we had no furniture.
There were like 3 couches we
my
brought
God.
up from the alley. It was one of those. But look, and that's the thing, and actually
Upholstered couches.
This is no joke, a legit PSA. I know what it is to be 22 and poor as fuck. Girl, do not pick up that couch from the trash. I understand you want to be eco-friendly. You want things not to go to the landfill.
And you want a couch.
And you want a place to sit. Like, I get that. It is not worth it. Because if you get bed bugs, you have to throw away all your beloved things.
Yep.
Or store them for years and years.
Yep.
It is not worth it. Do not get things out of the trash.
Unless they are things that you can... So, like, upholstered items, no good. If they are things that are, like... wood or plastic, basically anything that you can completely sterilize with bleach.
Yes.
Probably okay.
That's okay.
Like, but you have to sterilize it. Like,
Yes,
do your
every
due diligence
inch.
on cleaning it.
Yes.
So, furniture, not totally off limits, but I would say anything upholstered.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah,
Just don't do it.
Not worth it.
And let me tell you, when we got rid of all that furniture, do you remember what we did, Jay? We took a ketchup bottle and we painted on the ketchup bottle, "Do not take bed bugs," because we were like, we're not going to pass this societal STD
well, y'all
on.
did a good
Pay it forward. You
service.
gotta pay it forward. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a fabulous photo shoot out there too with wigs in the trash. So
Yeah.
JJ,
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit, just for the listeners, about your job? What do you spend your life doing? A bunch of good things.
Yeah, so I primarily will, like, quick soundbite, I end up saying, like, okay, so my background is in theater and performance, and I primarily work with organizations that use theater, specifically participatory theater, or some element of public-facing performance or interaction, to address reproductive justice, most specifically sex ed and sexual assault prevention. So I work with a couple of different organizations, one of which is an organization called Catharsis, and we tour around the country going to different college campuses and presenting a show called Sex Signals that they bring in often for their freshman orientation. That's sort of an interactive, it's a mix of scripted material, improv material, and a facilitated dialogue with the audience where we talk about gender, consent, bystander intervention, general sort of sexual assault prevention. And then I also work with a company based out of Chicago, the Illinois Caucus for Adolescent Health, and we do a bunch of participatory theater around reproductive justice more broadly, but I also work with them as a peer sex educator, and we do, so like some of the work that I do is more performance-based, but some of the work that I do is a straightforward, like, we're doing a sex ed workshop, or we also, with the Catharsis job, we have a contract with the military. I don't go out to military bases so much anymore. I used to, but we also have a contract with the Navy. There's a naval base near Chicago, and I will sometimes go out for them and do like a workshop class where we're literally, it's not performance in the sense of, oh, there's a script, but, you know, it's like leading a workshop in a class, sort of basically about rape culture, like rape culture 101 kind of. Yeah, so that's most of the work that I do. Again, I have a background in theater, so I also do, like, some side gigs, teaching artist work. Like I said, I do, like, tours of the Art Institute and, like, things like that. You know, that gig-to-gig life.
Yes,
trying to cobble together paychecks.
That's, like, so eclectic and beautiful, though. Like, I bet you're rarely bored.
I would say that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's fucking awesome.
Thank you.
You know, and you're, like, doing a good thing.
Thank you.
Like, what you do is, like, a service to, like, some fucking freshers that don't know what the fuck they're doing, who were sheltered and had sex ed in high school, which is to say none at all, and need a good course on, like, this is okay, and this is for sure not okay, you guys.
Totally. I mean, honestly, like, so one of the questions, we're getting into, like, the freshman orientation season now, so I actually the part of the reason I came here is I was doing a show at Eastern Connecticut State. And one of the questions that we always ask at the very beginning is, you know, how many people got a sex ed class in high school? People raise their hand. And then we ask them to share, okay, so what do you remember learning in that sex ed? And without fail, every single time, you know, the list includes abstinence. And then often it's like abstinence, STIs, pregnancy. This is like basically the three. And sometimes it's literally just abstinence. And So we sort of use that as a jumping off point to get into the conversation that we want to have. But the other reality that I think is just like so fucked up and frustrating, and sometimes I'll say to audiences is, you know, I'm also really sorry that for many of you, this program that you're about to see is going to be maybe the first open, honest, blunt conversation that you've ever had about sex and sexuality. And guess what? It's a conversation about rape.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. Like that, you know, and it's a necessary conversation. It's one, of course, I want to have. But I say that just to highlight, like, you know, we need to be doing better by our young people. And we need to be starting to have conversations with younger and younger ages about positive, right? Like positive models of sex and sexuality. And that, I mean, that's sort of why, like, I like very much that I have multiple avenues, because the work that I do with the Illinois Caucus for Adolescent Health is a little more, it skews a little younger, and it is a little more focused towards like, okay, we'll go into a middle school or a high school and have a straightforward sex ed, as opposed to coming into people who might already even be having sex at the point that we're getting them as a, you know, 19-year-old freshman and saying, great, now we're going to have an open conversation about sex and dating, which you might already be engaging in. And you might have already internalized all of these really, really, really toxic, fucked up messages. And we're going to try to like undo some of them.
For sure. Right? And pop culture definitely plays a part in that, because like there is so much pop culture that ingrains in them those like bad messages about what sex is or should be or looks like, you know, this like unrealistic perception. But then there's thankfully some pieces of pop culture that like maybe are the only good pieces of information that young people get. And like that's a tragedy that like in our communities, we don't talk about it, and we just, like, pretend like it doesn't exist. Like, anything to just, like, not even say the words. And, like, for sure, that's the world that I grew up in with, like, my family. But, like, luckily, I had friends that I could, like, talk with about that. And, like, not everybody's comfortable speaking with their friends or strangers about, like, sex. And, like, that sucks, too, because, like, guess how you got here? Your parents fucked.
Right.
Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, totally. And that's, I mean, and that's, like, in terms of pop culture and media, I mean, that's why things like representation are so important. And this is something I've thought about a lot more recently, is even in programs that are and I'm not like shitting on them, like programs that are better than abstinence only, even most of those programs are still focusing on sort of risk reduction models of sex, which often means how not to get an STI and how not to get pregnant. And those are useful things to know, but the thing to keep in mind then is you're literally not speaking to anyone in that room who's not cisgender and straight. Like literally. And so when I think about representation and media, and like, Mickey, this is something that you and I have talked about, also talked about in the context of like, even like something like pornography, where I have so many complicated feelings about like, okay, like what is the representation that pornography is offering? Because some of the models that porn presents, because that's the thing that I will tell a lot of parents who get really skittish about like, oh, you can't talk to my kids about sex. At this point, I'm like, well, all right, you can make the decision not to talk to your kids about sex. Just be aware they have a smartphone, they have access to computers, they're watching porn. Yes, so at the very least, or they're at least exposed to it. If they're not necessarily seeking it out, it is there. And it like, and I know this because I saw it back in like, you know, when we were young, when I was like 12 or 13 on someone's like home computer in their basement, their big desktop, right? Like, and it's so much, and so I just say like, well, they're going to be watching porn. So just be aware of that if you don't want to have any conversation. I think that's a misstep. And I think this is where like media literacy comes in and is important. But I sort of like now have gone off on a tangent. But like one thing that I remember, Mick, you and I had talked about was like, well, on the one hand, there's a lot of mainstream porn that I think does present a very one-note version of sex, and so it would be a mistake to just like, well, just leave it up to Pornhub. That'll be kid sex. Like that freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah, that's
right?
upsetting, definitely.
But the other reality is for identities, for queer identities, for LGBTQ folks, so many friends of mine, people that I know within those communities have talked about, well, for me, porn was literally the only outlet or forum that I had any kind of representation of people who wanted to fuck the way I want to fuck. And like that to me is a huge, I mean, thank God it's out there, but like that's another reason why when we think about media and we think about representation of affection and romance and identity, it's so important. It's so important because it's still, we're so far behind in even covering that in programs that are arguably, some of the best that are even out there when it comes to sex ed. Because they still skew very straight.
Well, yes.
And very pregnancy-based, very
fear-based.
Very one model, very PIV sex. Like, very okay, having PIV sex is great. Here's how to keep it safe. But then they're not...
Wait, what's PIV
Oh, sorry,
sex?
penis and vagina.
Oh!
Right? So even...
No wonder I didn't know that acronym. No wonder that one confused me.
Again, he's such a good actor.
But even thinking about that, that's how most programs approach sex, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Sure, of course.
You're leaving out a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, and
a lot of
also,
people are never going to have
a lot of body parts that women also have. Can I just say also? Right?
Nobody's teaching you about titty fucking. You gotta learn that the hard way in college.
You gotta earn that pearl necklace.
You gotta pretend like you were excited and not confused about what is going on.
You wanna fuck what part of my body?
Okay, I am fine with this.
You've got to figure out your own method of okay, just push it together with your hands and make a little tent so the penis is entirely enclosed if you have small boobs like me. That was a big upward battle for me,
Well, okay, so with this in mind, Jay, when you're looking at the vast expanse of pop culture, media, TV shows, movies, is there something that you really find yourself drawn towards that you think, okay, this might be helpful for the conversation we're having as a society right now? What draws you when it comes to media?
I mean, so a super basic level, when I'm consuming media, I want character. That I want a good story. I really do. I don't it's hard for me to hook into things that are just using people as stand-ins for ideologies. That doesn't do it for me. So I will always say,
do you mean if there's a token lesbian that doesn't really, she's not
fully fleshed?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that would definitely be an example.
Pandering.
Yeah, or just a show that is about isolated individuals who are all who are not in community with each other. I like to see shows that are building complex relationships because I think those are the shows where you don't just get, this is a character that has an ideology that I agree with or that I identify with. I think that's really important. That is something that certainly I think about, on a very basic level ever since I was a little girl, right? I've always been, a burgeoning feminist since I've always been very, going back to, the 90s and my childhood of, girl power mover, right? I was always hungry for strong female characters, for sure. And I do believe that, it is so important to be able to see people who you identify with on screen and in books. I also think it's really valuable to see those people in community with and in conversation with people who are not like them and people who are not like you. And whether it's their nemesis or their friends, which to me is often more interesting, where you get to see, because then you get to see modeled friendships that are varied and friendships between people who don't always agree with one another or
which
have
is
different
so
experiences.
Important.
Yeah.
Because that is real friendship. You're not all you're, especially long-term friendships. Sometimes you're gonna fucking hate that person in a flash of a moment, but then the next morning you're gonna have coffee and it's fine.
Yeah.
That's one of the most important life lessons that I've learned about. Sometimes people think okay, this is my friend. We're going to be equally this close and have the same opinions forever. And that's not realistic. Right. People grow and change all the time. And this is kind of off topic, but I would just like to impart this to people. If there's anyone this could help, sometimes friends grow apart. It's okay to let that happen lovingly. And then when it's time a few years from now,
maybe
for y'all to come back together and really reinforce that intimacy. It's happened to me over and over and over. And I think a lot of people are they used to be my best friend, but now they live across the country.
And now they're dead to me.
Exactly. And I'm girl, you just gave up on a very important friendship is what you just did. Because naturally, we wax and wane.
We spent years apart where we, first of all, Mick and I are terrible at phone.
We're both
neither
bad
of
at
us
that.
are phone people.
Thankfully, we both knew that about each other.
Yeah, so we, happily accepted, I'll see you
a couple of years from now.
Sometime when I see you again. But, when you come back together with, people that you do love and that you're friends with, it's always so nice to just, pick up where you left off, which I've had that
Yes.
experience like so many times with like good friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And
that's a
if
good
you think
point.
someone's your good friend, I promise you, and well, you know, sometimes people get addicted to meth and then things go to hell, but usually, I'm
Arkansas.
talking about you, Jessamyn. No, I'm just kidding. I'm
My teeth are falling out of my head right now.
Girl!
Sorry, that's not funny.
Stick those teeth back in. Yeah, no, it's not funny, but we made the joke, so we'll go with it.
Sorry, I did. I mea culpa.
Well, I have never made an inappropriate joke myself, so...
And I personally have all of my teeth.
Important.
So, Jessamyn, speaking of inappropriate, kind of, what's your favorite cuss word?
Oh, I mean, I love a fuck.
You just love...
I love
just
fuck.
love fuck.
It's
I
a really
do.
solid
I really like...
representation of so many feelings.
I really like saying fuck.
Yeah.
I think it's delightful. I will, you know, close second is I like a lot when people get creative with, I forget what's the grammatical term for when you combine two words? Not like a contraction.
Word
but when
smash.
Word smash.
Word smash?
So, well, let me just say, so I close second is I really enjoy when people get creative with attaching the word shit to things, like shit house, or like, there was a sign,
Shitbag. Shitstorm.
yeah, shit bag, I think is great. I saw a sign the other day that was for DJ Shit Pig, which I was like, fuck yeah, right? Like, so, if you can give me a real good, like, whatever, someone very smart that listens to this is probably going to be like, it's a, like, when you make a new word out of two words, it's not a contraction, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, like, shit
and I
something,
feel like,
shit
I feel
plus
like
another thing.
somewhere deep in my brain, buried
I know.
under years of trauma and
And
drug
piles of
abuse.
wine.
Yes, and a whole fucking store full of
Yeah.
wine. There is that term,
Yeah.
but who knows?
But I like those a
But you
lot,
know
too.
what? Our listeners probably know, and they're screaming right now at the
know.
radio.
And we hear you? And it's very
do hear
loud,
you.
so could you please tone it down?
Yes. Can you please remember, this is a professional podcast.
We're just
okay?
people, and we make mistakes, mostly
have
make, but like it happens.
Excuse me. First of all, one, I don't make mistakes. Two, I'm an angel in human flesh. You need to
Okay.
get that right off the
Well,
bat.
hyperbole is rampant.
Okay,
It's
this
fun.
old leprechaun-ass motherfucker over here trying to come for
No,
me,
but
telling me
speaking
I'm
of-
hyperbole.
Speaking of leprechauns and fucking, or the word
Oh.
fuck.
Love this.
No,
Love
excited.
this.
I misrepresented this transition.
I'm drinking extra wine now.
So I was recently in Ireland, and I heard you were too. And
I was.
we had this tour guide. We went on like a day trip to Northern Ireland, which was great. And our tour guide's name was Noel, and he was hilarious. And we sat at the very front of the bus, like we're 98 years old, and we just talked to
Love
Noel all day. And he was so funny. And he was telling us like the way he just kept giving us information about Ireland and the culture and like things to do. And he brought up how in Ireland they use the word fuck a lot. He was like, you might have heard a lot of people say feck or fuck, and he was like, don't worry, it's not a bad word. Guess what? It's just a word. And he was like, they just use it like children use it, parents use it. It's not a thing that you hide from your children. It's part of your vocabulary, which is easily how I feel about it. Like, I never feel like when I say fuck that it's a cuss word. It is so just a part of my vocabulary that when other people who are distant in my life but are in front of me hear me say it and are surprised by it, I just can't even understand. Because I don't think that it's just a way to represent emotion and like emphasize feeling, and also like it's so fluid and it's just like a part of my vocabulary.
I also think there's something that, at least for me growing up, has always felt in a tiny way particularly exciting or even rebellious about being a woman who freely says the word fuck,
Yeah.
I mean, I think because there is such a thing around like, be a lady and mind your P's and Q's
I've
and
heard
politeness.
so many times that I cuss like a sailor.
Exactly.
Now. I'm like, fuck yeah, I do.
Yeah, and
That's great. That's the language that I use.
Absolutely. And you think about that, like, that's automatically gendered male, right? Like, sailors, you think dude, you think Popeye, right? Or I do. So, like, it's, I also think there's something about that, like, at moments in time, because they have happened, where people have chastised me or commented on, like, wow, you really have a foul mouth on you. There's a certain part of me that, sort of rears up into, like, yeah, absolutely. And men have been talking like this since the beginning of time. And how dare you tell me that, like, I have to, form my words in a certain way for you because I am a lady or what have you. So I think that's another reason. Like, I just think fuck feels very Also, it has to do with sex, and I like
Yeah.
that. There's also for me that I'm like, oh, yeah.
It's so multi-intentional.
Yeah.
Like, it can mean so many things. Or everything all at once. It's a great word. I approve of that. I also really like cunt as like a term of endearment.
I don't like, personally, I don't ever use that word as an insult.
Yeah.
And I don't.
No.
And I struggle with it when I hear it as an insult.
Yeah.
Like, it still gives me a little like, oh. I think, although I'm not positive, kind of like it when said in the right tone by the right person as a way to name a body part of mine if it's being said. Like I think about, like, this is something that I've thought about of, like, what would I be okay with someone saying to me in the bedroom? And I think in the right context, like, we were talking about this the other night. There's that movie, you know the movie Atonement? Do you ever see the movie Atonement?
Yeah.
Well, so there's that whole
Ian
scene.
McEwan.
Right. So if Ian McEwan wanted to tell me in my dreams, like, kiss your cunt, your sweet, wet cunt, I am, like, already panties dropped.
You're like that.
Right. So, like, there's something about that
See you soon.
that's, like, beautiful to me, and kind of, and I want to say that maybe I've even said it once in that context of, like, touch my cunt. Like, it feels pretty to me when I say it, and maybe if the right other person said it. But that's one of those moves where it's like,
That's fair.
I gotta know
it's a
that
sensitive word.
Yeah, like, if I was on, like, a first date, like, hookup, and someone was like, yeah, get that cunt ready, I would be like, hard breaks right now. Like,
Not having it.
I don't know.
You know what ruined my use of the word cunt? Because cunt is one of my favorite words. I love the k. I love the nt. I love
I know you use it a lot. I know
love
you
that
do.
word. I do. But, I mean, granted, though, that is not my word. I don't own that word. Well, no, I really don't. There's no way in which I own that word. But rewatching Game of Thrones right now, the Hound on Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
calling people,
see?
and every time he does it,
And I
I
can't
laugh
stand
so
it.
hard. See, and that's
Oh.
and valid. You know, you have a cunt. I do not, and I get that. That's the difference. You know, that's when when gay men are played for laughs. Sometimes I laugh too, but most of the time I'm like, why are you laughing at that gay man right now? Like, seriously, because a lot of the time the joke is he's gay.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And similarly, right, that big butch hound man using the word cunt, it's funny because he's so not a woman, but I'm also like, what? I think there's a journey to be gone on with the word cunt for me, but I do love the sound of it. It's one of my favorite words. Just for sound. But that's because I can come at it just from the way it sounds.
But that's, that's the thing, right? Like, you know, like, language is so contextual. Like, if you think about it, like, I really enjoy the word pussy, and I think in this day and age, especially with, like, Pussy Riot and, like, all, like, there's so much language around, like, pussy power and, like, hell yeah, pussy. And that was a word, first of all, when I was, like, young, when I was, like, 11 or 12, it was a hard, I used to think, like, I was like, oh my god, I would never be able to say that, nor would I ever be okay with anyone saying it, right? Cut to me, like, you know, at 18, like, yeah, get this pussy, right? Like, it became something when I was like, yes, absolutely. However, to this day, it drives me up a fucking wall when I hear someone call another person a pussy. So, I mean, like, it's, you know, and that's still an example where I'm just like, absolutely not.
You're like, are they strong and gratuitous and bearing in fruits?
Exactly. Oh, wait. Oh my god. I just remembered. Oh my god. This is amazing. Sorry. I'm just remembering this.
Jessamyn just had a stroke. Full on stroke.
My high blood pressure.
Oh, no, my sweet baby.
No, so I just remembered I was having this conversation about words specifically for, like, vulvas with a friend, and she was telling me about this shirt that she saw that said, I'd call you a cunt, but you don't have the warmth or the depth.
Oh.
And I was like, yes! Okay, like, that I can get behind, right? So to think about, again, like, when people turn these words into insults, we can take them back if we find the right words to do so, I think, is what that, like, I was like, that's fucking fierce. Like, I'm gonna start saying that if I hear anyone call another person a pussy.
That's a good retort.
Or call someone a cunt, right?
Yes.
It's like, no, I'm sorry, they don't have the warmth or the depth.
Word. I like that. I'm into that.
So, Morgie, now, just a quick time check, Morgie. What time are we at?
39 minutes.
Oh, Lord have mercy. God have mercy.
I
bless
talk a
us,
lot.
Jesus.
I talk
To
a
be
lot. I'm
honest,
sorry.
we could talk about pussies all day. You know what I mean?
You know what? We were thinking...
Also true.
And you know what I realized? And you have no reason to apologize, Jay. Not at all. I didn't even say what this episode was about because I'm a drunk-ass, ridiculous person.
We'll put it in the show notes, but let's 40 minutes in. Y'all, this is a Hostful episode. Our content is not directive. It will be meandering, as per the last 40 minutes may have indicated.
But this is, I mean, because Jay does so much sex education and is so plugged into that kind of world, my thought process is you're an amazing resource for us to have on the show.
Oh.
And Morgie, how would you feel about, and this is literally in the moment, y'all, so Morgie might just be like, nah, girl, I don't want to do that.
Never.
Fine,
Yes,
Morgie.
and what would you like?
Look at that improv. Look at these theater kids living their lives.
Living their best life. They're all pretty.
We were going to do catch-ups on Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. How about, Morgie, we can do that in our intro for our next episode?
I think that sounds great.
Would you be okay with that?
Absolutely.
And then maybe, because we have a few questions for Jessamyn that are specifically related to sex in society today, and also perhaps sexual assault, also perhaps harassment, also perhaps toxic masculinity, also definitely the patriarchy. That's always there. We have no choice. Morgie, you be okay to move into those? Will you hate me?
No, not at all. Let's go to
Will you hate Jessamyn?
Well...
I don't care. It's fine. My friends hate each other. I hang out with y'all separate. It's no big deal.
Seeding rivalries. See, this is how the patriarchy works.
It is
Try to pit female friendships against one another.
That is how
in
it
competition for male affection.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, but to be honest, you can have them.
No.
Oh, motherfucker! This is some bullshit. Look at
Shit house.
Look at these straight ass shit house shitbag women coming at me as their one queer friend.
Whoa!
I'm attacked.
They're one queer friend, but that means we need you, girl.
I know. I'm important for your. Well, Jessamyn has like 40 billion queer friends. I can't even be playing that card. Here's a question, and this is actually a burning question, Jay. This is the first question I wrote down for you, and I really want to know your answer, but feel no pressure though. Okay?
Oh, great. Okay.
How, if at all, have the events of the past 2 years, that is Trump's presidency and the beautiful and extremely powerful Me Too movement, how have they affected your worldview? And I have to say, Morgie, this is a question for you too. I'd love to hear your feelings too.
Well, okay, so that big question, and I'm gonna take a tiny bite out of it, just to start us off. So, you know, you and I talked. I think, God, you were like one of the first people that I talked to over the phone the night of the election. I remember that conversation very much. Like
I was walking around my block just for Klimt.
And
I literally was walking around dark neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
So upset.
And I, you know, the next day I was sort of walking around in this daze in Chicago, and it was this weird, like, Twilight Zone fucking day where, like, I felt like everywhere you walked, people's eyes were red and bloodshot, and people were crying, and if people weren't crying, you were like, why the fuck are you crying? You know, which is maybe not fair, but whatever. And so that was around the time that I was about to step into the beginning of an early devising process for a new show that I was working on with the participatory theater company FYI, that's through the Illinois Caucus for Adolescent Health. And it was a show that I had pitched that I was really excited about, and I was on the writing team for it, and I was going to be producing for it. And it was actually about virginity, and it was about what are the messages that people receive, young people specifically, about sex for the first time and what that means, big air quotes there, and what that means specifically for people depending on what identities they hold. All this to say, I had this whole moment after the election where I went through, and I think a lot of people went through this regardless of their field, but I know specifically a lot of artists went through this, where it was like, what the fuck am I doing? Why does this matter? Right? Like everything, you know, like I have to change careers and go to law school and become a lawyer, or I have, you know, and I definitely felt that. And I also really understand where that comes from, and I still have those moments, right? Like, you know, today we went to the march on the Capitol of Austin for the you know, Abolish ICE, Keep Families Together, that national march, and, you know, people talking about, like, if you're a lawyer, if you're an immigration lawyer, if you're a bilingual lawyer, you know, I still to this day have these moments of like, what the fuck? I'm not any of those things. What am I doing, right? And I think it's really easy to feel that way consistently. But it was, and I thought about canceling. I bring up this specific instance because I had a conversation with my artistic director at the time, and I was talking to her about, like, should we cancel this devising session that we're planning on hosting? It was like the next day or something, so it wasn't that day, but soon after. And I was just like, I don't. And thank God, what she was like, honestly, Jessamyn, like, I think that we need to lean into the things that we are doing more than ever, and just embrace that, like, in whatever small way that is still meaningful. Like, if you truly believe that the work you're doing is making you a better person and is offering something to the people that you are serving, whatever that means to you, that, like, that is a tonic that is needed right now. Like, that there is so much pain and a deep wound. And this is not to get all woo-woo about, like, everything is fine, and if you just, like, because I will say that I have, I think, activated in many more ways than I was before. And like so many other people, I did have my own, especially as a, straight, cis white woman, right? Having my moment of, like, how the fuck did this happen? And so many people around me being like, well, of course this happened. Have you been paying attention? And having my moment of, like, fuck, like, I don't know. Have I? Maybe not enough, right? So I don't know if that's a super concise answer, but I do firmly believe that anytime in moments of moral and ethical crisis, and, like, which I think we're in completely right now, it's really easy to start saying to yourself and to fall into this rabbit hole of, like, well, I'm not doing anything to make a difference. Well, how could I possibly do anything to make a difference? And if I have to change my entire career, then that seems too impossible right now. So, like, why even fucking bother? And, like, well, maybe I'm just going to binge watch this show and, like, hide in a hole for the rest of my life until everyone is dies. And I have those days, and I think many people have those days, and justly so, right? Especially when the danger and the threat of danger is imminently more present to you, depending on who you are and what identities you hold. But I think it's kind of this logic to me of, like, the world needs people who feel fulfilled and whole and alive, so that those people are ready to fight. And it is necessary and needed and okay to do the things that make you feel fulfilled and whole and alive, so that you will have the energy to create the world that we hope to see. And that's not like, oh, you get a pass on ever, voting, or, like, there are certain things that I'm like, no, we all need to do this. But at least for me personally, around the question of, like, so is making art frivolous? Because that was really what, is the art that I'm making suddenly useless or frivolous? Is it not relevant because it's not specifically, like, a direct action piece of art against the Trump administration? I had to reconcile that with this idea of, like, well, no, actually. I mean, and in my case, it was like, no, like, the thing that I'm making is speaking directly to the reality that so many people are given fucked up messages that create a prison of shame for them around their sexuality and their sexual expression. And that's a prison that so many people live in all the time. And then power mongers like Donald Trump thrive off of that. Mm-hmm. So whatever small piece, like, I might be able to offer to even speak to that or point it out is relevant. But in a broader sense, I guess I just think, like, trying to hold that in whatever it is that you're doing, of, like, if you are doing it with integrity and if you are doing it in line with your ethical core, there's a value to this idea that in any war, in any battle, because I do think that's kind of what we're in, there are different battle positions that people hold. Everyone is not the infantry. Everyone is not a foot soldier. Everyone is not a general. Everyone is not, like, there are different positions for a reason, because strategically we need to have people who are willing to be on certain front lines, and we need to have people who are willing to be in, cultivating healing spaces, and we need to have people who are willing to be in diplomatic spaces, and we need to have people, so I don't say that as a, like, so you're off the hook no matter what you're doing. Like, if you're fucking working for Breitbart, I'm not like, well, whatever makes you feel like whole and how, like, I don't mean to say that, right? So it's like, it's all fine, right? Like, but I that was something that was important for me to come to terms with, because it just was not sustainable to then say, I'm now stuck in the life path that I have chosen because it feels irrelevant in this moment in time. Like, you do not make yourself irrelevant, is, I guess, what I was... something I've been thinking about.
Oh my God, that's powerful. No, I'm not even kidding. As a person who sells soap for a living, Straight up. I mean, that's how I made my money these past 6-7 years, you know? I haven't made off of art even. That's very powerful to me because if you can be kind on the day-to-day,
right,
you know, that makes you a person who's stronger, who can help hold people up. And that's wisdom, I think.
I'd like to say, though, you may sell soap for money, but that's not what you do with your life. You do a lot of things outside of that to perpetuate your message and your message of inclusivity and liberalism, and like you do your part in like whatever way you do, especially with this podcast and trolling J.K. Rowling on the internet when necessary. Like, you're putting in your time. It's happening. So
He's so kind.
I think all of that was like so well said. And just to sum it up in a crude way, you questioned who you were as a person, what you were doing with your life, what our nation has become, and what ways you can do to help salvage that in some way.
Basically.
And I think that's all we can all do. And everything that you said, I had, but in like a different version. The day after the election, I went into a job that I'd worked at for many years with coworkers that most of them I didn't know very well. Several of them are like some of my best friends in the world. And I wore all black, and I got nothing done. I sat at my desk all day. I went to meetings. I talked to people, and it was a haze. It was just a haze of, like, what happened? How did we get there? How is there so much ignorance and hatred in this, like, fucking first world country that, like, this is, like, what has happened? And that has done nothing but perpetuate every day since then. I don't understand. I don't understand. And I've never felt so, like, weirdly isolated in my, like, progressive ideas. Like, it just, to me, is, like, how is, like, what, in our opinion, are, like, the right ways to live your life and, like, equality? Like, how is equality up as, like, a debate? Like, it just continues to be baffling.
Yeah.
It's just a constant nightmare. And I have a lot of friends who say things like, you know, they want to, like, move out of the country, figure out, like, a better way. But and even, like, moving out of Texas, right? Like, Austin is very much an oasis of openness and acceptance, and Texas is not.
No.
We live a fucking battle in this state. And so I have a lot of friends that talk about leaving the state of Texas for somewhere that's more inclusive. But then at the same time, it's like, if we lose those votes, like, if I left because of that, like, they lose my household of votes. And, like, what does that mean for the future of Texas?
Well, and not just those votes, but those people who might be willing and in a position to actually have conversation and sit in conversation, compassionate but rigorous conversation with the people who might otherwise just default to, you know, voting for someone like Trump, or just or not voting at all, or, you know, because I think, I mean, that's the other thing, right? Is like, you know, there's a lot of talk about, like, being insular with your, you know, with friend groups, with social groups, with political parties. And I think it's
on Facebook.
On Facebook, yeah. And I think that it's important that people are, you know, pointing that out. I think, to me, it's like this two-hander of, like, when people talk about preaching to the choir, right? And I hear that a lot of, like, well, you're just preaching to the choir. And I'm like, yep, I also love the choir, and the choir needs to get fed. Like, the choir needs to get nourished.
Why did the choir come to church,
like,
and not to be preached to? Can I just say, to a certain extent?
And to get nourished and not feel alone, right? So we need to be in community with each other and preaching to our own choirs and nourishing and, like, literally fueling that flame. But I think we need to be doing that so that those of us, especially those of us who have the least amount of risk to incur, someone like me, right? Who, you know, I it's not always the most flush month, but I'm financially stable. I'm not in a position where I'm worried about being assaulted on the street just because of how I present, right? Like, I'm a white, cis, straight woman. I am very fortunate to have immediate family who I care about, who care about me, right? Like, all of these things.
And who are fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Shout out to your family.
Shout out to my parents.
You haven't met them.
Shout out
They're
to Anne and Leo
amazing.
and my brother Lucian. They're right. So, but all this to say, it's like, I want to be in spaces where it is like, oh, we're preaching to the choir, because I think we need that nourishment. But then, for me at least, it becomes a matter of taking that and figuring out, how to use it not to flee the country or to flee our community or to flee the company of people that make us really fucking uncomfortable, but to actually sit down with those people and try to figure out, like, okay, like, do you understand that, like, what you're doing or how you're voting or how you're not voting or what you're saying right now is the cause of so much harm. And I think that is truly the province of specifically of white liberals, especially white, straight, able-bodied, cis liberal. Again, like folks who, you know, are not going to incur immediate harm or wrath from the people that they are talking to, because I do not think that it is on the people. It is never on the abused to then suddenly comfort the abuser or the bystander, right? So, like, but, you know, we can't, all the rhetoric around leaving the country that I heard, like, it got me really upset at a certain point, because beyond just being incredibly privileged of, like, oh, so you're just gonna get on a flight and uproot your life and not have to worry about getting a fucking job in a foreign country? Are you kidding me? But it's also, it's like you're jumping ship when we're not recognizing that we, and I'm saying we, I'm not necessarily including both of you in that, because I don't know how you identify, right? Like, but, like, we let this happen, right? Like, that's what I think about. You know, it's like, okay, so we let this happen. And I don't say that with, like, oh my God, I'm flagellating myself from a place of horrific guilt, but it's like, okay, I have a certain status and power in this country, and this happened. It's happened while I was here. So, okay, like, what, like, how do I in some way chip away at that? And to me, it certainly doesn't look like leaving. Certainly doesn't look like abandoning this country and the people who can't leave, who continue to be fucked over. And it also doesn't look like completely 100% isolating away from anyone and everyone who has an opinion that I'm like, well, that's awful.
Well, and you know what, Jay, that touches me, because America is a great social experiment. I mean, the United States is not just a huge, you might say, the primary world power because of our money and our military. Now, it certainly helped. But from the very beginning, we said, you know what? Nah, girl. We're going to do something a little bit different. We want to switch things up a little bit here, okay? We know what it's like to be ruled by a despot, by a king, by a tyrant. We're willing to do something different. We want to put laws into effect. We want to have checks and balances. And though France doesn't often give us credit, you know they copied us about 2 minutes later, right? So, like, and then it spread, you know, in a very real way. It spread. Now, they had the Magna Carta in England and stuff. I'm not trying to take you on a history lesson right now, but I'm just saying America is special. By what we were founded on, we are special. Now, in some ways, we're alike. We've certainly abused our native populations. We've certainly done lots of things to be ashamed of. But, like, it makes me very sad when people are like, I'm going to leave the country. Because I'm like, girl, I know America's far from perfect, but I think, don't realize that every other country's fucked up too, girl.
Right.
You want to go to Norway, huh? Because they got
fucking Brexit.
Girl! Because, like, Norway, let me just tell you, Norway's, like, 95% white. Can I just tell you first of all? And can I tell you second of all, Norway, which I want to visit, and please don't hate me if I come here.
Can't wait to go.
Norway, they're very intense about immigration. Yeah. They're not an open borders country, not at all. So people are like, oh, well, okay, well, I'm going to go to Norway, I'm going to go to Canada. Canada's fucked up, girl. Let me tell you about Canada and their indigenous population and the highway where all the indigenous women who were hitchhiking to try to get away from their fucking trailer park horrible lives were abducted and are missing. There are hundreds of women missing from this highway outside of, is it Vancouver or something?
Yeah, it's somewhere on the Pacific.
It's horrifying.
Side.
Indigenous women is who this person or series of... Anyway, the point is, what I'm saying is there is no country that's perfect, bitch. And so when you jump ship, I'm like, girl, you don't know what you jumped... You just jumped into idealism and you don't know what you're doing.
Well, and I think it's an act of cowardice and a lack of accountability. That's what I'm saying. Because I agree with you that, like, the thing about America, right, is it... The thing that I think so many people stumble on, and I'm guilty of this too, right? But, like, that we as Americans stumble over is, yes, it is an experiment, or was an experiment, and a beautiful dream that was also built on the backs of slaves. And the slaughter of indigenous people. And the fact that we, as Americans, as a whole, are not willing to acknowledge that. Like, that's the problem. And it's something about, again, like, sort of like what I was saying about, like, complexity in narratives, right? That, like, we are not willing to acknowledge that, like, there's a huge hypocrisy in that dream. And that doesn't mean that the stated intent of the dream is wrong. It just means that we never actually were living that dream the way that we say we were. And that's the problem, that we have written history books saying America was founded on these things, period. We don't often say America was purporting to be, or trying to be even, or endeavored to be founded on these things, and yet time and time again, voices have spoken up, rightly so, pointing out we claim that we believe in these things and we are not living them. And that is not, like, the people that say that that is an un-American or anti-American perspective, like, if you're a true patriot, you just blindly, like, you put your blinders on and you say, well, the intention was good, so it's fine. That's, to me, the mindset that's horrifying and dangerous, fascist. Right? Exactly.
That's fascist.
And one thing I will say is that there are other countries, and I agree with you that, of course, no country is perfect, but I will say, if you think about, like, you know, people have brought this up a lot recently, but countries like Germany, where when Germany teaches the Holocaust, they are not pulling any punches about, we did this horrible thing, and it was absolutely fucked up. Period. Right? Like, they're
I
not...
never thought about that.
Wouldn't that be horrifying as a German to learn about the Holocaust? Well, talk about white tears, girl.
But honestly...
White tears.
And I'm actually curious about this, though, and I don't know if there's more, again, smarter people who are listening to this podcast may tell me, if there are actually... What are the parallels of, like, Germans and how they... Like, this whole idea of, you know, white guilt, white fragility, like, what is Germans' experience with that? Because I actually feel like if we learned it in, again, a complete and holistic way from the get-go as children, and we were taught to understand that, like, there was a lot of slaughter and bloodshed and hypocrisy in our nation's history, that maybe we would be able to integrate that into our worldview in a way that didn't suddenly completely block particularly white people from taking any action because of their own fear or white guilt or admission of, like,
or defensiveness.
Exactly,
that's
or defensiveness.
Huge.
Right,
the defensiveness
exactly.
is one of the biggest things. And I'm calling myself out in this. Sometimes, as I've grown, as I've learned as an adult, and this is how I've actually changed since Trump became the orange in chief. I had to step back and say, okay, you know what, girl? You're from a white trash community. A lot of the people that you love voted for Trump. Okay, first of all, you need to take that in, okay? And be okay with that. Not okay, I mean, but I can't hate my loved ones who voted for Trump. I can't do it. But I do need to say to myself, okay, there's something desperately wrong about this situation, right? And then the second step, which was I'm not going to be... You know, I'm not going to dissemble about this. It was a very upsetting step for me, was saying to myself, okay, you know what you've been through, like Kimmy shit.
He just smashed two words together. He did a word smash.
Kimmy Schmidt on Unbreakable. We just watched that episode 2 of season 4 last night, where she goes into the nail shop with all, you remember what I'm talking about?
Vietnamese ladies.
With all the Vietnamese ladies. And
they have names like Martha.
Exactly, because they just pull a name tag out the bowl or whatever. And that's real. I don't know if y'all remember the expose the New York Times did on women working in nail shops. Human slavery.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Very often human slavery. Okay, but doesn't... Human slavery is not the point. What a thing to say for a white man. But anyway, moving on. But I was like, you know what? Look, when people look at me, they see a man... Even though I consider myself genderqueer, they don't know that. And frankly, I present as straight and mannish as I can because I am afraid to be hurt. I'm afraid people are going to hurt me in the world, okay? So I go out and I say, okay, I look like a man. I'm white. I'm very Caucasian. Only 2.2% West African. That doesn't even count for anything.
He did 23andMe.
I was so upset.
Yeah.
This is a bullshit. I'm so fucking white.
Everyone in America thinks they have
damn.
Native American in them. And then 23andMe is like, nope, your families were just colonizers. Yep. And there we are again, where we're like, well, if we could just acknowledge this, maybe you wouldn't be all butthurt about the DNA testing.
Right? Exactly. No, but I'm so mad about that shit. All these family stories are untrue. But so then I was like, okay, so people don't see me as like this little like sensitive, hurt little child who tried to make his way in the world. They see me as a white man.
Yeah.
So I have to be okay with like, okay, they're going to come at me with that expectation. That's something I learned from this whole movement, which maybe sounds auxiliary, but really was connected to Trump becoming ascendant.
Yeah.
And then I also had to, and this was even harder, come to terms with the fact that gay white men, girl, we be showing out a lot. And showing out in ways that I think is racist, misogynistic, classist, hateful, mean, bitter, ableist, cruel.
Yeah. And
that really hurt me because I thought that oppressed people would naturally be kinder. I'm not saying I'm kind all the time. I am, after all, the bitch of Beauty and the Bitch.
Hey.
Right?
Oh,
Yeah, I own it. You gave me the courage to own it. After all, thank you. Thank you, America. But that was actually very painful for me because I always thought that we were the little guys. And it turns out that white gay men are just another aspect of the patriarchy. Sometimes. Well, in all of us, we have that possibility. And I have to tell you that
and
was
white supremacy is more. I think more so what like ends up coming up, right?
Well,
like because I feel like that's like hello, 53% of white women voted for Trump, right? Like of course, like
God.
all of it, I think that like the key then becomes like instead of turning to either guilt or then defensiveness or then bitterness, like that's why I'm like, okay, we can't run away. We can't run away from that, and we can't internalize it in such a way that it becomes crippling. We have to say like, all right, these are my people. And I can be upset with my people, but I know my people. So how the fuck am I going to talk to my people about like, hey, this shit is fucked up, right? Like, and figuring out what that is instead of running away because we're so afraid of being associated with like, oh, but I'm not that version of, like a white lady. Like, I didn't vote for, it's like, well, girl, it doesesn't matter. Like, you still need to do the work then of going into like for me, right? Like white lady spaces and being like, hey, we should do better.
I got you a mimosa. Right? I thought we could talk.
I got you a Chardonnay. I'm gonna be drinking Sauvignon
They didn't have any Sauvignon Blanc. That's okay.
But I mean, well, and even further beyond that, and this may just be a personal thing of me. Maybe y'all are like, girl, I never thought that. But I think it's also important to be like, look, maybe 53% of white women did vote for Trump. That doesn't mean that I have to be like that just because I'm a white woman.
Oh, no.
Right? Well, but I feel like, I mean, as a gay man who grew up hearing that gay people were evil, and also even more than that they were sexually predatory, and they were just perverted and like gross, often I have to like push back even in my own head against the idea of like, well, that's just, I mean, that's how I was raised, or that's just what I am, right? Like, I'm just, I have a nasty hookup somewhere. I get fucking STD in my throat. Real life has happened. And I say to myself, well, girl, you're a gay man. That's what you are, right? Now, I didn't really say that for long because I don't have very low self-esteem. But I think there are a lot of queer people who do say that.
Right.
Transgender women of color who are beaten and killed as if their lives and bodies don't matter I don't know sometimes if people understand when you constantly hear this message whispered at you, it feels like you have no choice but to become that in a certain way.
Oh, yeah.
And there are so many people who have self-destructive tendencies where I wonder what part society played in these self-destructive tendencies. Because they told you, because you're queer, because you're a pretty boy, I'm thinking of a particular person, because you're brown-skinned, this is the life you have to live. You have to live this hand-to-mouth existence. You have to live this sex-to-survive existence, And, yeah, it's a choice, but also it's like society tells us these things. They whisper these little hateful little things in our ears all the time. And women are certainly no exception. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
All women. You're whispered all kinds of fucked up shit all the time.
I was just telling you the other day how my aunt like fucking shared a thing on Facebook that was like a handwritten note to like wives everywhere, basically about servitude to your husband and how like if you expect your husband to do things domestically like in the house, like then that's your fault when things don't go well because you put those expectations and actually you were put in his life to serve him. And how just like furious I was about it, but like how that is just how, that is like literally just how she feels. And like, there's no, it feels like there's no telling her like, actually, equality in a marriage is like very fruitful and a very healthy way to live life, because she will never believe that, and she'll never have to live that, because I'm sure my uncle will just continue letting her do everything for him.
Right.
And it's just like, it's like, to me as a person who like wants to raise children and have a family, there's so much fucked up shit from my childhood. Like, I love a couple of members of my family and the rest of them I don't love, and I stand by that, because I also think you don't just have to love people because you're expected to love them because in some way you're related to them, or like other people you love them, and I don't love them, and I don't visit them, and I don't support them, and I stand by that, and I'm proud of that. But there's all these things that didn't go the way in my life that I in a fantasy would have wanted them to go, right? Like, especially like with my central family, like I never had a fucking mom. Boo-hoo, who cares? You know, like I made the best I could out of it, and I think that turned out pretty fucking good. Like,
Amen,
picking
queen.
up the pieces along the way. And like now I'm so excited at some point to like raise children, hopefully fucking little girls, that I can tell like, you're a boss ass bitch, and like you can do whatever you want, and like you can love whoever you want, and like we're just gonna like hopefully be able to change the next generations, because people like my aunt, there's some people you can't fix, and that's a sad truth in my opinion, but you're so true that there are some people, there's a percentage of that 53% of women who just do what someone else tells them to do, who just does what they're expected to do, and they don't have to do that. And if people like us don't tell them, did you know you had choices, they won't know.
Right.
They won't
say that. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong, there are people in my life that I'm like, well, we're just waiting
this is
for you to die.
Is.
I mean, that sounds
just
awful.
As I thought.
No.
Just as I thought. Trash.
and that's a reality.
You should get
Like,
a bumper sticker.
I know, right?
yeah, it's hard, and I think it is that balance of like, I'm gonna fight as much as I can, as far as I can, but always keeping in the forefront. Again, like the thing that I think so much after this election, I also need to keep myself whole and healthy and feeling alive.
Yes.
And if I can't feel alive or whole or healthy around a
can't pass
person
it
to a
on.
certain point, like then yes, absolutely, I'm not a fan of like, so you have to like just like turn the other cheek, love light. Like, absolutely not. No. No.
It's been like just essentially an embarrassment to like be a part of, like, especially like when I was in Europe recently. Like, first of all, Brexit, like they don't have any room to talk, but second of all, like I feel like every person that I met when I was out, like that was literally the first thing they said. They were like, oh, so what about this Donald Trump situation? And it was like, well, lucky for you that I also think it's fucking bananas, but unfortunately the majority of my country doesn't. Like, you know, like that's just the sad, horrible, embarrassing
technically,
truth.
Maury, the majority voted for Hillary Clinton. I'm just saying, we did have the majority vote. We just didn't have the crazy ass electoral college.
You know, to be honest, political math is like hard. And
my little gay brain can't do nothing.
to be honest, I'm just a woman, so I don't know.
I totally understand. As a queer faggot cocksucker,
I'm just like, do you think I should get the double D-bro or just like free the nips? Which one? I don't know.
Ask your man.
Yeah, whatever he says.
Oh.
Okay.
I immediately touched both of my
begins
boobs.
groping her chest. We're all groping our chest now, listeners. This is our lives.
And honestly, it's a sight to be seen.
Oh, girl. People pay.
So that was beautiful and very political, and we're all on the same page. And I want to just, we have been talking for a long time. I just want to wrap up maybe with a discussion that's near and dear to my heart. And Jessamyn, I love that you're so sex positive, and that you bring just like, you bring such a good energy to like opinions that we already shared, and you highlight great things and like activism and shit people can be doing. Let's talk about cunnilingus and
Yes.
Now,
my favorite.
As
on the menu all the
people
time.
might be aware of, men love blowjobs so much that they pepper it throughout everything that we love, from literature to off-screen sex acts that we wink about in YA appropriate material that's on ABC Family. But
That's very specific there, Morgie.
it's just a generalization. But where is the love for for the vagina.
I know, right?
Where is it? Very specifically, Jessamyn, where can we
Literally where? No. So I will
literally.
say specifically if we're talking ABC, because I have to say this is why I have an undying, abiding love for all things Shonda Rhimes.
Oh, I love Shonda. You know Olivia Pope's getting her some.
But not only, like, you know, in the vague sense, like, literally, the thing that I love about Shonda Rhimes is every single show of hers, I'm gonna say, like, across the board, at least all the ones I've seen, so Grey's, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, I can say definitively. Oh, girl.
I haven't watched that show yet.
There is oral sex performed on women, almost front and center, and it just, here's the, I have said many times, this is the thing, like, if I had grown up in a childhood where Shondaland was on my, you know, basic ABC television package, I think I would have known so much sooner than I did to expect that someone eating my pussy was part and parcel of them getting to go inside it for me. Like, and it was just, and I look at these shows and I just think about, again, look, everyone has their personal preferences. Some people don't like blowjobs. Some people don't like cunnilingus. Cool. Like
what people?
We should pair those two shows
Honestly,
together.
you know what? Honestly,
They deserve each
we
other.
can't even get into it. Bring me back another time, and I will tell you a story about a straight man who was not into receiving blowjobs.
Oh,
I still sucked his dick because I asked him to. Because I was like, can you just let me try though? And very consensual. Like he was like, okay, are you sure? And
I wonder if it's like a personal space.
Well, so that was the whole conversation that we had. Is like he was a very feminist identified man, and I totally track this like psychologically, and like his whole thing was he was like, no, I would never ask a woman to do that, and we had a whole conversation where I was like, so do you think that women don't like giving head? He was like, well, why would you? And again, this is like another thing where it's like, well, when you
depends on the day though.
But exactly, but when
no, it doesn't. It's all dicks all the time right down my throat.
But think about it when you present sucking dick as an act of subservience and submission, right? Because I grew up with this too, right? Like, it makes sense to me, although I've always been a fan, it makes sense to me why, for many people of any gender, it would then correlate, like, oh, okay, so, like, sucking dick is an act of subservience and submission. So if I'm a straight man who's trying to subvert the patriarchy, it's plausible. I get it. Don't worry. It doesn't matter. Like, there was dick sucking to be had and it all was great. But we're not here to talk about dick. Look at me running away with talking about dick when we should be talking about eating pussy.
Can I just tell you though?
That's the patriarchy, really.
Just in passing, if your dick is in my mouth and your balls are in my hand,
then it's all good.
You're in my control. I don't know exactly what you think is happening here, but I can bite off your dick and rip off your balls, honey. What you think is going on?
And there are some great films where that happens as a retaliation.
And
that's just a little bit strange.
I totally feel you on that,
like,
but like let me just leave you with the expression "suck my dick" and what it actually means and what it's actually connoting.
Yes.
Like it's not like a wackadoo notion that like making someone suck your dick is.
Well, they just assume suck my dick is going to come bite my dick. But I'm just saying, I'm a grown ass woman.
Okay, but
and I will bite your dick.
Fair, but to the real point of like, why are we not seeing ladies being pleasured? Why are we not seeing like representation of women getting eaten out? Which is
why?
I mean, probably because it's an act that's specifically devoted to just lifting up female pleasure, or people with vulvas pleasure, right? Like, it's specifically an act that has nothing to do with a phallus. And like, I think that like for so long, like that's just been, again, we have this notion of like sex is about like penis goes into a vagina or maybe a butthole or into a mouth and ejaculates. Like that's the sex trajectory, right? So like, what does oral sex do for the situation? But all this to say, Shondaland, big plug. Like, especially How to Get Away with Murder.
I feel you on that.
There are women getting eaten out on that show, and I frickin' love it. Also, Hello, Mr. President, Kerry Washington, and Tony Goldwyn in Scandal.
They're really hot together.
There's some oral sex in there.
They got some chemistry.
Also, oral sex with the other dude, Jake Ballard. I forget the actor's name, but the other dude that he's
got that murder vibe.
Ooh, but he talks about like this is what I'm talking about. Like, I love when it gets like dropped. Like, there's a scene where at one point he's like, "Well, I know what your daughter tastes like," and I'm just like, "Oh yes, say it!" Like,
her dad, it's complicated.
He's
okay, I don't watch this show, so I was upset by that.
No, villain. He runs this like elite secret organization called B613 trying to bring down the world and like kill people.
Yeah, he's trying to like mean bug her dad. But
I see.
So he's like making a power play. But I will also say, I know y'all love Game of Thrones, and I will say my favorite sexual scenario in that entire series. Jon Snow and Ygritte in the goddamn cave. That is the most... Not only that, but... And I haven't read the books, but apparently in the books, there's... My friend was telling me, because I was so excited about this, because everyone knows it's like, oh, you're eating pussy. Someone tell Jessamyn. So someone told me that in the books, there's actually a whole other thing about it where... is Ygritte is her name, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Or Ygritte, am I pronouncing it?
Ygritte, yeah, I think
She calls it the Lord's Kiss in the book, because in the series, there's the whole moment of like, well, is that how royal lords in the South like touch their ladies? Like, why did you kiss me down? And I love the dialogue about it. I'm so into anything that speaks to a woman's discovery of like, oh, this is a thing, because that rings very true for me. That was my experience. And I'm so into like lifting up representation of like, yeah, it's a thing, girl, and it's awesome. And like it becoming this like sweet, lovely. That made me very happy. It was like one of very few pleasurable sexual experiences depicted on Game of Thrones.
And that was really hot too. And they're beautiful and actually married in real life.
Married now.
Yeah, so she'll be getting it forever.
Yes.
Women that I feel like I know and that have known throughout my life find themselves in relationships where they do not get eaten out.
Me too.
And I'm just here to tell these women that, like, you can do better. You can do better.
Yeah.
And you should tell your people. And there's nothing scary about it. And, like, if your man or your woman, which would never happen, that's not a thing, because women know what's up. But if your man is, like, not there for it, girl, you need to get you a new man. Mm-hmm. You need to get you a new man or a new perspective.
I don't understand that. If you like vagina, why you don't want to lick that
They're
vagina?
so scared.
I like dicks, and I'm always
so
down.
scared,
Literally, I don't understand it.
Because of toxic masculinity and because of femphobia, right? Like, because there's an association, and this is why, like, look, you want to see some good eating pussy, watch The L Word. Like, watch any queer or lesbian show, and you'll see a lot of good, like, eating out women, right? But
Sarah was watching that when we lived together. Like, she was like, Sarah like always binges like a series at a time, and she was like binging that, and I came home one day after I had like a long day at work or whatever, and I walked in and there was some like mad like pussy pounding happening, and she was just like casually eating on the, I was like, girl, what you watching? She's like, oh girl, you got to sit down.
It's like, if you want to see some hot sexy times with ladies, watch The L Word. But I think in terms of like, that's why for me as a lady who likes dudes, right, like it was so radical to see depictions of dudes going down on women, because we don't see it that much. And I think there's also still, I think it's probably getting better, but like, I hope, right? Knock on wood. There's a cultural association of that as, because it's like an act of service, I guess. It's feminized. Like, it is deemed by many folks as unmasculine. I mean, like, recently there was that story where DJ Khaled came out and was like, I don't fucking eat pussy.
Oh, no.
Well, and he has a wife, right? And everyone's like, okay, right? And granted, that's not everyone, right? Like, there are other, like, I live for a man who's like, you know, like, into it and expresses the fact that he's into it and is, again, man enough to speak to, like, yeah, I like to please my partner. And it's not about, like, being masculine or being feminine. It's about treating sex as something that is a mutually enjoyable experience, and it's about treating sex as something that you do with someone as opposed to something that you take from someone.
Amen.
Or that you score off of someone, right?
Preach. Okay, so we've got Shondaland. We've got at least that one episode of Game of Thrones where Jon and Ygritte go to next level. What are some other places where we can see this in pop culture? Because I have one particular thing that I love that I know that you also brought up previously.
Oh, really? Okay, well, so this is something that, like, I honestly, like, I love a good listicle, and, like, your listeners, like, they should just chime in, frankly, about, like, where are the top scenes of, like, women getting eaten out? I know, because I literally put that on Facebook once. I was like, what are the top scenes of... And it was a short
pertinent
list.
Information.
It was a short list, to be perfectly honest. Like, my one friend was like, well, Blue Valentine, that movie, if anyone saw it. But parenthetical, sad oral, which if you watch it, it is. Like, I went to watch it and I was like, well, this is like a really sad movie about like the deterioration of a relationship. So like, the oral is great, but like, I don't know, like, so in terms of TV, like, I think Shondaland takes the cake for me. Oh, another one of our friends was like, well, have you watched Outlander?
Because, girl, Shondaland ain't got nothing on Claire getting eaten out. That bitch gets it every episode, every direction. She's like, I'm a woman in power. You will be doing this. And he says, yes, thank you, can I? And it happens all the time. And Mickey knows my obsession with Sam Hugan, who is my super celebrity crush. He's the one who mostly is doing the going down. So
yes,
I'm going to just ruminate on the
Slurpee machine. It's like that. You know that thing inside the Slurpee machine? It's like that seems to be what that show is. I'm very excited. We're gonna watch that for an upcoming episode. I'm gonna be binging it. I'm gonna see a lot of Slurpee machine action.
See, I've only seen the first season, and I literally I didn't even watch the whole first season. I literally watched, like, my friend was like, just watch the first episode and you'll see some great cunnilingus. And I was like,
oh yeah, and that was her first husband.
Oh, it was
that's not even her new guy.
It was delightful.
It was, and it was very empowering and very like mutual and like in a loving way. Like she has like a beautiful, especially because it's set. Okay, first of all, it's time travel, but it's set in like the 50s, and then it's like set in like the 1700s because time travel. But like a woman in that age, like owning her body and like whatever, it's great. And when I found that book, I had heard about Outlander, it'd been on my mental radar. Girl, there was like 300 pages where she just gets eaten out, like, because she has like a sexual reawakening when she meets some Jamie Fraser, played by Sam Hugan in the show. Girl, it was literally 300 pages of her. It was like bedtime reading. It was like flip, 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 flip. Like, could not stop reading that.
And that's, like, I remember, not just TV, like, I remember when I was, like, when I read, I think it's The Time Traveler's Wife, like, in books, like, whenever there's a reference in books, I remember reading a passage where, it was Time Traveler's Wife, and this character was describing, he's like, I decided in this moment that what we needed now was cunnilingus, and he describes his partner, Claire, and he gives this whole description of, like, if cunnilingus were an Olympic sport, I would medal. Claire loves getting eaten out, and he has this whole chapter about, like, she will forego, like, she will do extra dishes, she will do the chores of the week, she will do, like, anything if I, like, service her extra times in a week, and I just remember, like, this is a man describing with such affection and love. Like, it was from this place of, like, I love the fact that my girl loves to, like, have me eat her out, basically. And I remember reading this, and I guess I was in college at that point, but just, like, even reading that, like, I was like, oh my God, like, this is someone, like, getting excited about their female partner being sexual, and being sexual in a way that I think to a lot of women feels selfish or feels unnecessarily, I don't know, demanding. I think, and to me, again, it's like with all of the bullshit that is out there about, like, vaginas being, you know, needing to look a certain way or smell a certain way, or, like, you know, like, there's so much insecurity that's, like, bred, or maybe not bred into us, but, like, planted into our brains. Like, when I first went to college, I literally went to the health center. I had never had sex, and I literally went to the health center, and I asked for a gynecological exam, which I didn't need, because I said, I just want you to look at me and tell me if my vagina looks normal. And God love the practitioner at the health center, because she was like, okay, like, here's a book, and it's got a lot of color pictures of different vulvas, and I want you to look through all of them, and if after you've looked through them, you still feel like there's something about your body that you really want me to look at, just to, like, assure you that it's healthy, then come back here. But normal is a very, very...
Good job, Reed College Health Center.
God love this lady. Right, and so then cut to me, literally freshman year, at the fucking dining hall, hiding, like, this... And I mean, like, thank God, like, full picture, color pictures of, like, literally just hundreds of vulvas. And I looked at them, and when I went back to the health center to return the book, I said, I don't think I need an exam. Thank you very much. And it still took me a long time to, like, get comfortable enough with my body to be, like, you know... It took really, really open, loving, supportive partners being like, I love doing this. That's what it took for me, honestly. But I would like to live in a world where it doesn't take an outside source like a partner convincing you that your body is worth being pleasured. That's the world that I would like to live in. And that's why I think that representation of all kinds of sexual pleasure, but I have my own personal, like, vendetta around, like, specifically, like, pleasuring, like, vulvas. Because I never saw it growing up. And it made a difference to me.
Can I just say, as far as, you mentioned vaginas having to smell a certain way. So there is, and I'm sure many of our listeners know this, there is a term in the gay community, the drag queen community, which is fishy. Which means a drag queen that's passing as a woman, okay? Now, that is kind of, I'm not going to say it's a misogynistic term, really kind of, because it speaks to the fact that a vagina might smell like fish.
Sure.
Let me tell you something, just in case, I think you all probably know. But let me just put it out there for all of society. A dirty dick smells like a fish stick, honey. I just want you to know that. So if there are women out there who are like, I didn't take a shower today, and like, oh, my vagina does smell like fish. So does a dirty dick, baby. Genitals tend to smell kind of fishy.
I mean, it's real moist and like, there's a lot of things going on down there with clothing.
Girl. So I just want to put that out there because you know what? No one ever told me that. I wouldn't know that if I had not smelt a few dicks in my life and been like, whoa, fish sticks, I just want to put that out there in case there's anyone carrying that around and worried about the way that their beautiful vagina smells. It smells just fine, honey. As long as you practice just basic hygiene. Just basic hygiene.
And furthermore, being on your period is not disgusting.
Not at all.
So love yourself in every way. You're a little magical unicorn.
Find you a man that will eat you out on your period. Find you a man that will eat you out whatever hour of the day it is. If you need to go to the bathroom and splash a little water on it, like, that's totally understandable. I'm not saying everyone smells great in any part of their body all the time.
Please.
Like, when I come back from, like, the gym, I'm not like, yeah, put your face all over everywhere. But, like, like, we need to, we could be doing better by everyone, frankly. But I think that, like, the weird, all these products that are out there and the commodification of this entire industry around teaching women that, like, well, your pussy should clearly smell like wet dew on grass. And it's like,
if it doesn't smell like honeysuckles, we don't want it.
And it's just like, I'm sorry, I thought I ordered the pussy, not the wet dew on grass. Like, what did you think you were ordering when you decided to, like, shack up with me, my friend? Like,
human orifices smell, honey. Every single one has a smell. Human bodies smell. That is just facts.
You just gotta find someone who smells you like.
And you don't have to douche with fucking Morning Glory or what was that horrible douche that's real popular in the 90s?
Summer's Eve.
Summer's Eve.
It's still out there.
Horrible for the body.
You probably
right?
shouldn't
Horrible
douche
for
at
the
all
body.
because you have a natural pH balance that your body understands how to maintain.
Now, if we're talking about anal sex, there's a little slightly different.
Okay,
we're talking about something different. But I just want you to know, if you're having anal sex, you might want to douche because poop does live in your asshole, and if you don't want poop to be in your sex life, either have a good old bowel movement, or if you can't, maybe do a douche, unless you're okay with poop. Okay. In which case, I don't judge you.
That's actually good information that I feel like our listeners need to have. So that's good.
I kind of think that's important.
I think it's very important. And if you want to just, be like me and be a lazy bitch, you just, like, ride on the truth that, like, you know what, if you're going to go in there, just be advised that,
what lives
just
there.
Be advised that poop lives there.
You know what kind of cave that is? That's poop cave, girl. You want a shelter from the
have
storm.
at it, but
there might be a crack in the floor and you might fall down to a goblin kingdom. That's all I'm saying to you, Gandalf.
We have all been there. That place where you're talking about. Okay, well, you guys, it's been an hour and a half of
Lord have mercy.
Politicized, beautiful conversation. I feel like we all learned a lot and reveled in the hypocrisy of the nation we live in. And I think it was beautiful.
But also the beauty of the people around us. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry I talked so much and I went on so
that's
many.
what you're here for.
I got on 8,000 soapboxes, about 8 million different issues.
You got on the appropriate amount of soapboxes. Let's do our personal plugs up top while we're talking about that. Where can our listeners find out more information about you or the work that you do, maybe?
Totally. I mean, I'm, like, complete trash, honestly, at, like, social media. No, like, truly, like, at social media posting. I have an Instagram. It's Jessamyn7. I don't mind if people want to follow me, but, like, you're gonna just, like, see, I don't know, like, a lot of pictures of me with mimosas. It's not that exciting. That's great. But if you're interested, I mean, so you can find, like, the organization that I work with, Catharsis, is catharsisproductions.com, just like it sounds. That's probably more of interest if you're someone that might be looking to, like, book a program, but, like, you can check that out. Also follow us on Instagram at Catharsis Productions. It's a pretty fun Instagram.
Dope.
But yeah, and then just, like, I don't know, find your local organization that's, like, doing rad work. That's all I would say. Like, find your local thing, whatever your local Planned Parenthood. I just said Parenthood.
Find your local parent.
Find the local Parenthood.
And
like,
you know,
whatever it
we're
is.
missing some parents, so send a few of them our way.
Jesus, like Planned Parenthood, whatever your local org is that's doing sex positive work, that's what I would always like to plug.
Let's give a second plug for Planned Parenthood
Amen to
because
that.
fuck yes, Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, ACLU and all the amazing organizations that are doing all the great work around like that, you know, like abolish ICE. Like so fired up about that after the rally today. Seriously, find out your local org.
Yeah, we'll definitely link to the local ones in Austin, and we'll link to your organizations and stuff as well. You guys can, of course, follow us on social media. We're at Beauty and the Bitch or at BNBcast. We also have a poppin' YouTube channel. Mickey, what is happening over
Girl,
there?
there's so much happening up in there.
I don't even know.
I can't stay on top of it.
Okay.
So every Monday we publish our podcast episode.
Yeah, except for that one Monday.
Except for that one. There was one episode missing, but
I don't know
Morgan
what
says I
happened.
shouldn't mention anymore, but I just like to be honest. There's an episode missing, but it's no big deal.
It just upsets me.
It upsets me too.
I know.
I want perfection. And then also every Tuesday and Thursday we are publishing Let's Queer Witcher 3, which is my very queer video game playthrough of Witcher 3 Wild Hunt.
Okay.
And I have to tell y'all,
Girl.
shit's getting real right now.
Uh-huh.
I done have had to deal with domestic abuse
Oh,
in this
again?
video game. I also had to deal with 2 wyverns in a cave that I was not prepared to fight.
Nobody should have to go through that.
And you saw me run my ass out that cave.
Girl.
Like I was running from a football practice.
Girl.
And I never turned around yet. It's a pretty fun game. It's a gorgeous game. If you like to, you know, where it's legal, obviously, smoke pot and just binge something, we have 36 episodes of Let's Queer Witcher 3 out, each about 45 minutes, 50 minutes long. And it's a great video series to binge because it is a story. And plus you get to hear me being sassy about these horrible outfits people wear.
Which only compliments it. And if you're like us, we love watching other people play video games. Like, we've spent many hours watching Aaron go through video games.
Yes,
so it's just a great, enjoyable experience. So check it out over at Beauty and the Bitch on YouTube. You can also follow me personally on the gram at Morganized Mess, or check out my blog, morganizedmess.com. Or if you're on YouTube already, you can look at Literary Darlings. Mickey, where can people find out more about you? You done with that? You don't want people to talk to you?
You can't find nothing out about me. I'm a mystery. Are you kidding me?
Okay.
I mean, I'm on Facebook as Mick Parker, but I started getting all these
weird friend requests. I wonder why.
But no, they weren't from our fucking podcast. They were all Russian prostitutes.
That's actually our following.
And I literally think the fact that we say this in the podcast, I think the bots hear it and they're like, ding, dong, ding, dong. Because I started getting all these Russian prostitutes wanting to be my friend. And maybe, now, listen, let me tell you truthfully. If you're a Russian prostitute and you like this podcast,
Girl,
send me a
us.
message.
Girl,
I'll friend you right off the bat.
up.
But I'm just not sure these are real people. But yeah, you
That's
can
a
find
dilemma.
me there. But I would say, actually, if you're interested, come follow our YouTube channel because that's where the bulk of my work is going right now.
And what do you want to plug this week in pop culture in your life that you have been feeling? What's in your life? If you don't have something, I'll go first.
Well, you know what?
Okay, he'll go first because he's a man.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, why don't you go first because you're straight?
Oh, but am I?
Are you?
Oh.
Is this a moment?
Beauty and the Bitch exclusive.
She just got me excited and
my
riled up.
husband's literally outside waiting for us to wrap.
Okay. You go first, Morgan. You go
I was
first.
just gonna say, y'all, I love a good rom-com, like, no tea, no shade. I don't give a fuck. I am there for it. I love a cheesy rom-com, and Netflix has brought it. There is a new Netflix original. It's called, I typed it out, Set It Up. And there's like these 2 stars that are people that you know and you've seen, but I can't remember their names or faces. Secondary stars are Lucy Liu and Taye Diggs, with really great cameos by other really funny people that we like Titus from Kimmy Schmidt, Burgess, Titus Burgess, and a couple of other like funny people that you know and love. It's like 90 minutes of like pure joy that ends with like beauty and love, of course. Aww. Check it out.
Oh, I love it.
What you guys got?
My plug is tequila. Jessamyn doesn't have one. My plug's tequila. You know why? 'Cause I had 2 or maybe 2.5 margaritas today.
We can't tell.
And I also had a whiskey rose, which is a whiskey with rose water in it. And I'm feeling real good.
He's also been drinking wine So, like, additionally. So, yeah, check out Tequila. It keeps Mick hype. Check out that new rom-com. And check out Beauty and the Bitch, babies. We'll see you next time. Jessamyn, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You're amazing.
We love you.
Aww.
And
Y'all
we
are
love
incredible,
you, plural.
beautiful humans.
Oh,
Beautiful. Changing the world.
We'll never
for the
top
better.
that. We're going to sound clip that on every episode.
Yes. Will someone help me up from the floor?
Bye.
Bye. Bye. I'm on the floor.
Do you have a home? Beauty and the Bitch.
You
You look
the bitch.
Bitch. Beauty and the Bitch.
Beauty and the bitch.